Okay guys, welcome back. So it's time to continue with the game controller. One of the things that I want to do first is if we go to the score text, which is here, I want to set the hit count to be 0 because we're going to use that at the start of each round to then increase the amount and then save that as the overall score. Okay, so we can just disable that now and save the scene. Right, let's make a few rules. Let's jump into the game controller. Here we go. And let's scroll down a little bit to here, just above the awake, and we're going to make a few round rules, okay? Now, the first rule that I want is a private integer, and that's going to be the target score for each round. So let's call it the round target score. And initially set it to be 3 ducks that they need to shoot. Okay, then we need a public integer, okay, and this is the actual round score. Now, this is so that we can access it wherever we need to, so that's why it's public. And then we're going to create another private integer, which we are going to use as the incrementation for each round. So let's call it score increment, and we'll set that to be 2. So basically, when the game starts, we'll have a target score of 3. We shoot 3 ducks, and then what we're going to do is get the target score and add the increment to it, so that in round 2, the target score will be 5. And then in round 3, we'll get the target score again, which will be 5, and add to it again, to make it the target score will be 7 ducks for round 3, and so on and so on. Okay, so the other thing that we need to know is if the players actually started the game. So we're going to make a private boolean, which will be true or false, and we'll just call that player started, and originally set it to false because they haven't. Okay, so let's start making this come together now. If we come into the start menu, the first thing what I want to do is make sure that we've got the starting score for each round. So when the game first starts, it's easy, the score will be 0. However, in round 2, we need to get the current score off the screen so that when we shoot another duck, we just add 1 to that number. Otherwise, they're going to lose a score and it will repeat and start at 0 again. So let's get the player score, and then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the score off the text item on the screen, the hit count. Now, that is as a text string, if you remember. If we have a look here, this is a text string. So we need to convert that to be an integer, a number. So the way that we do that is we write the word int and then put a full stop and use the parse function, which will convert a string to an integer. So what do we want to actually convert? Well, we want to get the score count text from the screen, okay? And then once we've got that game object, which will be this, we then need to go after the text inside that, like so. Okay, so that will set the player score in the script to match the one that's on the screen on the graphic user interface. Now, when the game first starts, we want to make sure that the start panel is actually on the screen. So just in case they've started the game and then lost a target and then need to start again, we're going to create a function that will manage the start panel. So show start panel is what we're going to call it. So let's just scroll down a little bit and create that underneath the update statement. It's simply going to be a private void because there's only this script that needs to access it, and it will be show start panel. There we go. And all what this will do will actually get a hold of the start panel game object, which is here, and then set that to be active, and the set active requires a true or false, so we'll set that to be true. It's actually called show start panel. I was talking while I was typing. And while we're here, we might as well copy this and paste it underneath, creating a new function which we will call hide, and then set it to be false so that we can control that. Okay, back up to the start menu, because now what I want to do is get hold of the audio. So let's set the audio to get the component from the inspector for the audio source. There we go, and then we'll be able to actually assign clips into that. And then the next thing that I want to do is get a hold of the lives and make sure that the live count up at the top is basically what we want it to be. So if I click on the game controller, live count text is what I want, which is what I've called it. So let's come here and let's set the live count text game object and then get the text box inside that and set that to be the current lives that are actually in the game, but that is an integer, if you remember, up here. There we go. And we need to convert it to a string. So just write to string afterwards. And that's all we need to do for the start function. Okay, so now what I think we should do is actually show and hide all these game objects when the image target is found. So in order to do that, we need to tap into Vuforia and find out when it's actually detected the image target. So come up to the top and make sure we're using Vuforia. Okay. Now get rid of mono behavior. I'll show you why in a second. And swap that for default trackable event handler, which is the script that Vuforia uses to tell whether it's found the target or lost the target. Okay, now I'll show you why you need to remove the mono behavior, because if we click and hold Control and click, we need to go to the declaration which will jump to that script. Okay, now here we are inside the default trackable event handler. Now be careful in here, because this is Vuforia's file, and if we mess something up in here, we're going to break it. Now, if you look up at the top, this class includes mono behavior. So if we left it in the original game controller script, we would try to include it twice, and that would throw an error. Okay, what I want you to do is on line 20, we're going to create an additional variable. Now I want you to create a public static boolean, and we're going to call it true false. Okay, now we'll originally set it to be false. If I can spell false, there we go. And I just want you to copy this part here. Now this is a variable that we're going to access from the game controller script, and what I want to do is find out if we found or lost the image target. So if we scroll down the file, here we are with a trackable state changed, and we can tell if it's detected or not. And there are two functions, onTrackerFound and onTrackingLost. Now the two functions are declared a little bit further down. So here is the onTrackerFound. So it basically says get a hold of the colliders and the canvas and the renderer and set everything to be true and show everything that we want to see on the image target. Now what I want you to do is paste in our true false variable and also set it to be true so that we know that the tracker has found the image target. So let's go down to the onTrackerLost and paste in true false as lost. Now we can access this variable, and we will know when the image target has appeared on the screen. Okay, so close this file after saving and go back to the game controller. Right, now come down to the update statement, because this is where the magic will now happen. What we want to do is do an if statement and make sure that from the default trackable event handler, there we go, that my variable of true false is in fact true. Okay, now if it is, then what I want you to do is hide all the items. So let's hide the start panel first. There we go. So now the start panel would disappear. What we need to do is show all the items that are hidden. So let's create this function, show items. Now if you come up to the top, just to get us going in the right direction, I'm going to copy all this and come down to just underneath the update statement here, and this is where we're going to actually create the public void to show the items. Okay. Now the reason I copied everything is because I wanted to cheat and get the names of all the objects that I want to hide. So just delete all this. There we go. Okay, now what I want to do is set them all to be active, like so. So if we copy this part, we can just paste that in and make everything that was inactive active. Oh, the start panel actually needs to be false. In fact, it doesn't need to be false. What we need to do is call this function hide start panel. So you can go here instead and follow with a semicolon. Okay, so it will set everything to be true apart from the start panel, and that will be hidden. So let's give it a run. In fact, guys, I think I've lost my mind. We've just actually called this function above. It doesn't need to be there at all. Now, what we do need to do, though, is create a function that will hide all these items. So let's copy the show items function, and beneath it, make a new function called hide, which does the opposite, and it sets everything to be false, like so. Okay, now here we go. So if we found it, I want you to hide the start panel and show the items. Well, what about if we haven't found it? Let's do an else. And what we'll do instead is we will show the start panel and we will hide, we will hide, my head is going crazy today, hide all the items that we've just hidden. Okay, let's save the file before my head breaks today and give this a run. Let's see how everything is looking so far. Okay, so everything is hidden. The gun. We could do with more. Oh, and the duck's quacking. Right, okay. We can fix that in a second. Now let's hold up the image target and see if everything reverses. There we go. The game over panel is showing. So we don't want that to happen. So let's go to the show items. We don't want to show the game over panel. Like so, okay. And while I'm here, let's add the gun as well. So let's add a public game object called GUI gun. Okay. Now let's add that to the list down at the bottom. So the GUI gun, there we go, can be set to be active. And we can also hide that if I just come down here and hide the gun, set it to be false. There we go. Now, if I steal this line here, we can then go across to the target collider and make sure that we only play this sound effect if the trackable event handler has indeed found the target. And just to make sure that this is working correctly, I'm going to include it at the top, and I'm going to include using Vuforia. Here we go. Now it looks like they've upgraded this class because we needed to include Vuforia last time. Just to play it safe, I'll include Vuforia there as well. Okay, so let's go to the gun now and drag that into, when it loads, there we go, the GUI gun. So you can go here, and then I want to disable the visibility of the gun, and press play again. Okay, here comes the paper. So now everything I want to be hidden is hidden. I think I might remove the shadow of the image target text. I mean, personal preference. You guys can change it to your heart's content. Okay, let's see if everything switches. So here we go. Here's the image target. Okay, we can only see one of the shells and the score text hasn't appeared. Okay, go back to the game controller. So we need to make sure that the score text is visible. Let's switch to the game controller for a second. Now the score text, I'll just check its name. Score text, game controller, and the score text is not in the list. No. Okay, well that's odd. I must have missed it accidentally, guys. Let's add the score text then. So up here, yeah, the GUI score text. Hang on, I'm going crazy. Where is the GUI score text? There. I've dragged shell 3 inside it. Let's overwrite that. There we go. Okay. Now, the shells weren't appearing correctly though, so that does need addressing. So the shells are an array. Now what we're going to do, one of them actually did show up. So let's just have a quick look why. I know why. It's because I dragged the shell in place of the score text accidentally. So now the shell won't appear. Let's have a quick look. And there we go. There's the bird. Everything's fine. Okay. Well, I thought I was going crazy for a second then, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of the shadow of the text, like I mentioned, because I don't actually like the look of that. I think it looks better as just a static image, really. Okay, so far so good now. We're getting there. We're getting there.